It was 100% predictable, but nevertheless still shocking. Donald Trump started his second term by dramatically reversing course. Pardon for the January 6 criminals, withdrawal from the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Change Treaty, firing senior immigration officials. It's a long list. How much will Trump 2.0 change the United States? And what are the prospects for resisting all that change? Hi, I'm John Nery, and you are in the Public Square. I asked a longtime Democratic Party leader in the Filipino-American community to share his perspective on the return of Donald Trump. The immigration lawyer and civic leader Rodel Rodis served for almost 2 decades as an elected member of the San Francisco Community College Board and was chair of the Filipino Studies Department in the School of Ethnic Studies in San Francisco State University. He is, among many other responsibilities, co-founder of the National Federation of Filipino-American Associations. He joins us from San Francisco. Welcome, Attorney Rodel Rodis, and thank you for joining us in the Public Square.
Good evening, John. I'm very pleased and honored to be your guest tonight.
Thank you. I wanted to get your help in making sense of what happened in the last 2 days and also what to expect in the next 4 years. Let me start by asking, of Trump's many acts, speeches, executive orders on day one, what was the most concerning for you?
Well, I mean, probably the pardoning of the 1,600 criminals who had attacked the U.S. Capitol and who were serving time after being found guilty by juries all over the U.S., principally the East Coast, because that signals that the rule of law is out the door. Those criminal defendants can commit crimes with the full belief, justified belief that Trump will pardon them, as he did this instance. So the rule of law is out the window, and that is deeply concerning because we base everything on the rule of law. But if the rule of law can be flaunted, can be easily excused by the wave of a hand, then there is no justice, no system by which we can be able to redress grievances under the law.
Is this executive order freeing the January 6 convicts or pardoning them or commuting their sentences? Is it immediately executory? I mean,
yes. Most of them were already released. The ones who were serving 22 years and 18 years, the head of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, who committed violent acts. Trump said that there was not a single shot fired during the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. But in fact, there were at least 16 incidents that are documented that shows the rioters carried firearms and there were guns fired in the U.S. Capitol, which were all released during the course of the trial. So, and there were police officers who died, some because of the trauma of what they went through. They committed suicide, but there were others who still are suffering the trauma of their experience fighting the Trump mob that attacked the U.S. Capitol.
And essentially what this means is that he is condoning or encouraging political violence, at least violence that emanates from his side, right?
Correct.
But this wasn't surprising, right? I mean, he did promise this when he was running for re-election.
Well, it's all in his Project 2025, which he continuously disavowed, said he didn't know anything about it. But everything in Project 2025 which has very draconian measures on immigration, on climate change, on reversing everything, is being put into action. It's like Project 2025 on steroids. So it's very concerning. And, so we're bracing for what will come in the next 4 years.
Is it possible?
On the second day.
Is it possible to mount a legal challenge to these pardons? Or there's no way that can be undone?
I mean, we can mount challenges, but the problem is that he controls the U.S. Supreme Court. So all challenges will go up through the lines. We can win in the district court. We can win in the appeals court. It goes up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Alito and Clarence Thomas and the other Trump appointees will just confirm or affirm whatever executive orders Trump has signed. Trump promised that he would be a dictator only on day one. But the way the system is set up is that it is not just day one. It will be probably for the next 4 years, with what the U.S. Supreme Court has given him total immunity. Or he's interpreting it that way, and the problem is that any interpretation he makes can be challenged up to the Supreme Court, which will only confirm or affirm whatever he has decided. So it's going to be a very bleak time for us here.
Does that put the pardons that were ordered by President Biden on his last day in office, preemptive pardons for the former chief of staff, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, for Fauci and all that, and even for his family members. Does that put those pardons in some sort of legal jeopardy that maybe they can be questioned down the road?
No, not really. It's just that Trump is able to use those pardons, which were preemptive pardons, because Biden was anticipating, based on what Trump has vowed, that he would go after his enemies. He would go after General Miley, he would go after everyone who he perceives has done him wrong. And so Biden was just providing them with some legal cover. Now, if they somehow reverse his pardons, that is opening the door that his own pardons could be reversed later on. So he may not wish to challenge the granting of pardons so that it doesn't set a precedent against him in the future.
Rodel, I cannot help but notice that you're wearing a sweater that has a sign that says, "Immigrants make America great." I don't think that's a message that Trump understands or appreciates, right? He had a few orders, executive orders, and a couple of speeches that dwelt on immigration issues on day one. They were pretty disturbing too, right? I mean, he fired some senior immigration officials. What is the immigration scene going to be like in the next 4 years?
Well, the first thing is that he announced by executive order, he is removing birthright citizenship effective February 15. Now, birthright citizenship is embedded in the U.S. Constitution in the 14th Amendment that starts with the premise that anyone born in the U.S. is a U.S. citizen based on the principle of jus soli. But Trump is challenging that and saying that there is a provision that if your parents are here illegally or undocumented, you do not have birthright citizenship, which is not found anywhere in the law. But he's making that argument, and his executive order, which is being challenged by the ACLU, by the Attorney General of California, a Filipino-American, Rob Bonta, is challenging that. And there are other jurisdictions around the country that's challenging his executive order, abolishing birthright citizenship or limiting it extremely.
Yes, I
very
understand
extreme
that
law.
the order, which will take effect in 30 days, will prevent the federal government from recognizing the American citizenship of babies born in the United States if their parents are illegally in the U.S. or are, merely students on a student's visa, and all of that. That's going to affect many, moving forward. And I forgot to mention this. Of course, you have a very successful immigration law practice. So I really want to get your thoughts here. As you mentioned, there are already several legal challenges filed in different cases, and there are, I think, something like a total of 22 attorneys general of different states, pulling their resources together. But you mentioned earlier that the Supreme Court has 6 reliable votes for Trump policies. But we're talking about a policy that is in the 14th Amendment and on its face would be unconstitutional. Do you think that the Supreme Court under Roberts would uphold, over 100 years of jurisprudence and say, no, actually, an executive order cannot override the Constitution? Or do you think that they'll find ways to rationalize Trump's birthright order?
The problem is people should not make the mistake of underestimating Trump and how he has been able to successfully manipulate the law to his advantage. So I do not want to sound optimistic that he would not succeed because, he controls the levers of power. He controls the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court, aside from the executive branches of government. So he can order states like Texas and Florida, which are red states, to not issue birth certificates that establish people were born in the U.S. I mean, I've had cases of clients whose children were born in Texas, and the local authorities refused to issue birth certificates to establish their U.S. citizenship. So there are ways in which, without actually succeeding in changing the law, he can change the law by the way he gets them interpreted by the various red states.
Let me ask first, I have a couple of follow-up questions, but let me ask first, why is he doing this? What is his beef against immigrants?
One of the things that Hitler said is that in order to win the people, you have to identify the enemy. There's a musical now called Wicked that I encourage people to see because in that musical, the good witch asked the Wizard of Oz how he was able to control the citizens of Emerald City. And the answer of the wizard was by focusing on an enemy. In the movie musical, it was the talking animals, and they were all rounded up and jailed and stripped of all their powers. By focusing on the enemy, he's able to manipulate the interests of the people. Hitler did it with the Jews, and now Trump is doing it with immigrants, and telling them falsely that Haitian immigrants were eating the dogs, the cats, the pets, and stirring up false stories that heighten the hatred of American people for immigrants. And so it is important to remind people, like this shirt says, that immigrants make America great. That's even the people around him, people like Elon Musk and the heads of a number of corporations that are building are immigrants. And so it's baffling. I mean, he's married 2 immigrant women, Melania and Ivana. and his mother was a Scottish immigrant. So it's baffling that using immigrants when that betrays his own family history.
So it's very much the classic fascist framework, right? You create an other, an enemy, which you can blame for all the problems that you will inevitably confront. I noted that you mentioned, Elon Musk and other, tech company executives. A good number of them are immigrants, but a good number of them also hire immigrants because that's where some of the, not all of the world-class programmers are based in the U.S., so they're hiring these immigrants. My question is, there is already, even before Trump was inaugurated for the second term, some infighting between factions that support him, right? So Elon Musk very publicly said he supported these special visas for immigrants because, they need the programmers, the developers from the rest of the world. And then you have Bannon saying, you can't have these exceptions and so on. How do you think this will play out, this fight between the two factions?
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Trump in the first term is that even within his administration, he would play off his allies against each other so that none of them would think they have the upper end, and none of them will assume they have control over him because he can lean to one side, the Bannon, MAGA right-wing, far right, and Elon Musk, and what Biden called the oligarchy, the tech titan oligarchy that is now firmly with Trump, as they were very prominent in the inauguration. So using them against each other, Trump can be able to manipulate them so one can't expect that he will side with them, because he doesn't, if he wants to resist what they're pushing, he will lean to one side and play them off against each other. So it is a conflict, but like with everything, Trump is able to use conflict to promote himself or his interests.
I can't help but note that during the oath-taking itself, the tech bros, the chief executives of the biggest tech companies were on the front row. And the members of the incoming cabinet were in the second row. Is that Trump signaling, there's a special place for the, these tech company CEOs? What does that mean, placing them on the first row?
Well, it means, for example, Elon Musk has a blue pass. That means he can come in and out of the White House, and he will, according to the press, will have an office next to Trump in the White House. So he's being given a special privilege, and he sees the tech titans, the oligarchs, as Biden would call them, more or less closer to his level, whereas the cabinet members are his minions. None of them are there because they're qualified, except maybe Marco Rubio, who was confirmed unanimously by the U.S. Senate as Secretary of State. But the others, like Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and a host of others, are clearly not qualified, and they're there only because of the sheer will of Trump, who based their selection on the basis of their loyalty to him. None of them will exercise independent judgment. None of them will dare stand up to him. They were chosen because they wouldn't stand up to him. So they're in the pecking order. They're far below the tech bros that he has surrounding him now.
I might go back to this infighting a little later. I want to ask a second follow-up question regarding the immigration orders and the immigration actions that Trump has taken from day one. How will it affect the Phil-Am community? Would you say that, would you be able to point to, a majority of Phil-Ams either voted for Biden or voted for Trump? And then how will the new orders affect the Phil-Ams in the U.S.?
Okay, let's answer the second question first.
Okay.
Because the Philippine Embassy, Ambassador Romualdez, estimated that there are 250,000 to 300,000 TNTs, not undocumented because they came with documents, became illegal after. But he estimates that there are about 300,000. I think that's an underestimation. I think it's closer to 500, 600,000.
Okay.
But his recommendation, he publicly announced that his advice to the TNTs is for them to just leave, go back to the Philippines, and then find their way back legally. Now, the Ambassador Romualdez is absolutely wrong, first of all, because if you are illegal in the U.S. and you overstayed by 1 year, you are barred for 10 years. Even if you have U.S. citizen children who petition you, they will have to wait 10 years outside before they can return.
Okay.
So that is a barrier. That is something Ambassador Romualdez did not point out when he suggested to them, just wait till your children petition you and then you can come back to the U.S. because it's not going to happen for 10 years. And if they're in their 60s, 70s, forget it. So that's a problem. The other thing is also, I want to tell the U.S., the Philippine Embassy and the consulates in the U.S., you're not doing your jobs. There is a Vienna Convention that requires the U.S. government to contact the embassies or consulates of people who were arrested by immigration. That hasn't happened. And not because the INS or the USCIS and ICE doesn't follow the law. It's that the Philippine Embassy and the consulates do not bother to check or say, do you have anyone? Can you call us? And if they did call, what would the Philippine Embassy and consulates do? Nothing. Maybe get a plane ticket or get a schedule. Consulates and embassies from South America and Central America are actively working with the people who are in the U.S., mindful of the fact that they remit billions of their hard-earned money to prop up the economies of those countries. And so they do whatever they can to help them. If they need a lawyer, they'll provide a lawyer. If they need legal advice, they'll do that. That hasn't happened in the Philippine Embassy or consulate. And that's something that Ambassador Romualdez did not bother to mention, that what could they do? They could work with the Filipino-American communities all over the U.S. so that the communities which have lawyers all over the U.S. could provide legal assistance to our kababayans who were arrested or detained. And mindful of the fact that for years, 10, 20, 30 years, they've been remitting money and helping the economy of the Philippines. They deserve to have the support of the Philippine Embassy and Consulate. And telling them, just go home and then wait till you get petitioned, which is false, is absolutely wrong. And I would hope that the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Philippine government, the Philippine Congress, tell the Philippine embassies and consulates in the U.S., do your job. Help the kababayans in the U.S. who need your help. And that's what I'm hoping that people who watch this will ask their Congress, senators, Congresspeople, and others that they have contact with. Can you ask your embassy and consulates in the U.S. help the Filipino TNTs? That should be the least they can do.
These 300,000 to 600,000 in the U.S., are they at greater risk now because Trump is back in the White House? What kind of risks are they facing now?
If you look at California alone, the number of care homes, elderly facilities are in the hundreds, and many of them are owned by Filipinos, but they certainly are staffed with Filipino TNTs.
Okay.
Caregivers all over.
Okay.
They're working at sometimes below minimum wage. They don't get paid overtime, double time as required by law. But they can't complain because they could then be reported and they would be deported. So they're always in fear. Takot na takot, aside from tago ng tago. But that's the problem that, the problem is once you deport them, there was a report, a study showed that the U.S. will need about 600 to 800,000 caregivers in the U.S. because of the elderly who don't. Now, if you remove the Filipino caregivers, what will happen to the elderly American citizens? Who will take care of them? These are not good-paying jobs, and if they were paid what they're legally required to be paid, many of these elderly care facilities that depend on people who are receiving Social Security and can only afford $2,500 of their Social Security to take care of them. If you pay them, the caregivers, the absolute minimum wage, these care homes would go out of business. It's a very difficult situation, but it has repercussions for the Filipino TNTs and for the care homes and the elderly American population. So
it is
just like the farm workers, Mexican farm workers,
That's
you
right.
deport 20 million, 14 million, whatever is the estimate. Who's going to pick the grapes and the cabbage and the carrots and the tomato? All of those that people complained about, that grocery prices in a way is what caused Trump to win. But if you remove the people who pick those grapes, the ones they complain about, they'll be looking back at the good old days when it was this amount instead of triple that amount after he gets through with removing the people who who pick them up, who picked up those groceries.
About the role of the embassy and the consulates in supporting these illegals, was there ever a time that the embassy did extend support? Or, my question is, the failure just Ambassador Romualdez's during his extended term, or is it really characteristic of embassy work in the U.S.?
I would say so. I've worked with various consulates, consul generals, many in San Francisco, have been well-meaning, but they've not been given any instructions or guidance as to how to deal with the TNTs in the community. There is no, I'm not aware of any consulate or embassy forums that focus on the needs of the TNTs and how the consulate and embassy can help them. It would be good if they start inviting the Filipino-American bar associations all over the U.S. and a lot of community groups, people who are running the elderly homes, homes for the elderly, caregivers. All of these can be brought together by the consulate, by the embassy, to see how can we help the TNTs. How can we provide legal assistance? What are the legal rights, and how can they avail of the legal rights instead of just telling them just go home, because that doesn't solve their problem. And what happens to hundreds of thousands of them when they go to the Philippines? Their families, depending on them, will now be forced to provide for them, and they don't have the funds to do that. So it will have a devastating effect on the Philippine economy as well.
Or, they can do an Erwin Tulfo and run for the Senate. The Phil-Am voters in California, would you be able to say whether they voted, a majority of them voted for Trump or for Biden? Sorry,
It's
for
hard to
Harris.
say
For Harris.
because, you know, about 12 years ago, a Republican Filipino-American friend of mine and I created this Facebook page called Philam Voter.
Okay.
And in the beginning, we had almost an equal number of Democrats and Republicans. But in the last 4 years, the MAGA Filipino-American voters section started just attacking everyone who criticized Trump or who supported Biden and then Kamala in the most personal, absolutely nauseating terms that many of the Democrats started leaving Philam voters. So if you were to log on to Philam voter, it's almost entirely MAGA now. I mean, there are a few of us who still post, but it's just vicious. You know, if you, I mean, there's no civility of disagreeing. No, it's personal attacks, and so you know you have better things to do with your time than to read personal attacks on you. That's something. It's a lot of abuse that has happened in the last 2 years, especially. Yeah. So I mean that the question is, they're louder. The MAGA Filipino Americans are louder, and so that doesn't mean that they're the majority. But sometimes the people who speak the loudest are the ones you listen to, and the ones who are quietly just doing their work and expressing their views in private without wishing to be personally attacked. You don't hear from them as much.
So it's difficult to speak of motivations for why a Phil-Am would turn MAGA, but from where you sit and looking at what Trump has launched just in the first 24 hours, is there something that Trump will impose that might change the thinking of these Phil-Am MAGAs?
You know, I always hope that would be the case, but there's something in the psyche of many Filipinos, not all, certainly. People are attracted to strong leaders like Marcos, like Duterte, like, Germany was a democracy, a thriving democracy until Hitler came and he used the grievances of people resulting from the Treaty of Versailles that imposed huge taxes on the German people to get the German people to support his fascist agenda that included eventually the extermination of 6 million Jews. And so for some reason, a lot of Filipinos are attracted to strength or the perception of strength, and facts don't matter. They think, I mean, there was an interview with an undocumented Mexican farm worker who was asked why he was supporting Trump, knowing that Trump will deport him once he gets into office. And he said, because Trump is going to lower grocery prices, which is another thing. They believed him, and then once he came into power, he said, well, I can't control grocery prices, he admitted. But people believe his lies, and they voted that way, you know.
When people vote for someone like Trump or Marcos or Duterte, they have a sense of belonging, right? It's a form of identity. Do you think that after 4 years, and I'm assuming that things will go back to normal. I mean, there will be another election in 4 years. Do you think that at the end of 4 years, there will be more Filipino-Americans who would buy into Trump's messaging, would feel that they are part of that that community that he's building? Or would there be more Phil-Ams who would realize that, no, this is not for them?
Well, it depends, you know, if the prices of of groceries, if inflation, if unemployment, if as a result of the high tariffs that he will impose,
That's right.
he keeps telling people will be paid for by the foreign companies, when in fact, all economists will say, no, they will be paid for by the American people when they purchase those products. So if the economy tanks, and they compare what the economy was like under Biden with record unemployment lows, with the Dow Jones average being 43,000 when it was 19,000 under Trump, when you have just the infrastructure, the boom that's going to happen, or that is happening as a result of what Biden was able to accomplish, there is hope that that will change people's perceptions 4 years from now, and we do not end up with a President J.D. Vance.
Let's hope not.
Yes.
There is a joke that I've heard in Philippine circles where the punchline is that everyone should have a vote in the U.S. elections because the results of the U.S. presidential elections affects the entire world. But we're just looking on and seeing this actually still a quite close race. So I wanted to ask you, we can talk for a long time about the consequences of the return of Trump to the White House on the U.S. I'd like to ask you, how do you see Trump affecting the rest of the world? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, one of the problems about the people voting is that, let's recall that in 2016, Hillary Clinton got almost 5 million more votes than Trump did. Even if the majority of the people voted for the Democrat, the way the electoral college system works is that they can find ways to tilt the balance towards the Trump, and they can create laws that will affect the rights of voting. They can gerrymander the congressional districts, all of which can get the approval of the Supreme Court. So the electoral system can be manipulated. So even if the majority of the people in the world vote for a Democrat, they can find a way to still prevail. So I'm not holding any hope that that's going to happen. So that's the unfortunate.
And on the international scene, where would Trump wreak the most damage, do you think? Ukraine?
Ukraine,
Palestine?
certainly. Palestine, yes, but he's a very transactional president. So he will make demands on Taiwan that if you do not give us the microchips or whatever we need, we won't stop China from invading you. So, and that will have repercussions on our West Philippine Sea and what we're trying to defend against Chinese encroachment. So there are repercussions around the world. I mean, certainly Central America, South America. If he invades the Panama Canal and seizes control of the Panama Canal, if he takes over Greenland, and he's threatening Canada to annex Canada. There's just, it just staggers the imagination what he can do, because he's not governed by facts. He's not governed by, there are no guardrails in his administration. People who would tell him, Mr. President, you can't do that. That's illegal. That's unconstitutional. That isn't right. That isn't fair. Think of, the bishop who presided at the cathedral was asking Trump to show mercy towards the immigrants and towards the members of the LGBTQ community. if you look at the inauguration, as some people said, it's almost all whites. You know, you don't see, maybe there's a scattering of minority here or there, but the complexion has changed completely, whereas Biden had a multicultural to reflect the reality of America. But that's not what's going to be happening in the next 4 years.
So what does a person who believes in democracy, in the rule of law, in justice, living in the United States, what can that person do? We talked earlier about the infighting between the tech bro faction and the Bannon, deep MAGA faction.
MAGA.
Is there a role for Democrats, for instance, to light the fire under that conflict? I mean, how can someone fight back against all these coming changes?
You know, the problem is that with Elon Musk and all the tech bros, they control all the social media. I mean, Facebook and Google and Instagram, and they will get TikTok will probably be taken over by Elon Musk, and so they will control all the means by which people communicate, and that was very effective in getting the youth, in getting even minorities to support Trump because of their addiction to the social media that they look at, whether it's TikTok or others. Trump wanted to outlaw and ban TikTok until TikTok invested millions into Truth Social, which kept Truth Social from tanking. And now he has changed his mind. He has allowed TikTok, even though the laws passed by both houses of Congress, signed by Biden, banned TikTok. He's able, by one executive order, to extend it by 75 days, during which it is anticipated Elon Musk will be able to take over TikTok. And so we're hoping, Democrats, that there is a new Facebook Facebook type of social media called Blue Sky that Mark Cuban is backing, and Mark Cuban remains the one tech bro that's on the side of Democrats, and we hope there are others. Certainly the spouses of Zuckerberg and Bezos, and the widow of Steve Jobs are all on the Democrat side. But it's going to be an uphill struggle.
I have many more questions, but we've run out of time. Thank you, Attorney Rodel Rodis, longtime Phil-Am civic leader. The next few years look bleak, not only for the United States, but for the rest of the world. But clarity of understanding, which Attorney Rodis has provided us, is in itself a form or a seed of resistance. Again, many thanks.
Flame burning somehow.
Thank you. And that's it for us today. The next step for engaged citizens here in the Philippines, as in the United States, is to take a more active part in defending, promoting, living democracy. Download the Rappler Communities app to join the chat room of your choice. Thank you. This is John Nery. See you in the public square.